Hi there, my name is Jolisa, and this is my presentation. I will be discussing the key points on why I believe literature is so important. The importance of literature definitely provides an impact on humanities. Not only does literature impact, but it also allows the opportunity for creativity and communication between, like myself and other individuals. I think it is very interesting that we are allowed the opportunity to be creative and be able to communicate with others. I have moved on to my second slide, and here I will be discussing why literature is important and how it has multiple reasons and how we can relate to it. I believe literature impacts people and culture. I think it is quite interesting how certain books can relate to people and individuals depending on what culture they're from. I think that it's very quite interesting how we can just relate and be able to connect with these books that basically influence us as individuals and how we can be closer to our culture. In my perspective, I think that it's very cool that we are able to just pick up any type of book from the library, school, anything, any book, and we can just start reading and have the chance to relate to that certain book. Literature affects cultures in this way, and I think it's very easily relatable, especially when you have nothing else to relate to. It's so simple to just pick up that book, start reading, and be able to connect and just to relate to authors who originally wrote the book. I also just think it's very fascinating that we have this opportunity. The next slide, I will be discussing literature and connection. Literature allows creativity and connection with our imagination and ideas. With literature always around us, I feel like we are able to connect with different aspects of life. We can be creative in the way that we can develop our own stories and in our own lives. And it's amazing how we can just do this, have connection with things that we go through in life, and we can just jot it down easily. Grab a pen, paper, you're able to just jot it down. I think having relation with these authors and books, it comes into play when you're writing your own stories because we can relate and we can also just be inspired by things we go through in life and as well as these authors. Like, I mean, I'm sure an author does not just jot down things because they just come up with it. I'm sure it has to be an experience that they go through, which allows them to be creative and it allows them to connect with themselves and just things that they go through in life. So I think connection in literature is extremely, extremely, extremely important. Without connection, I don't think we could have literature. I don't think we could write. I don't think we could. There's just no relation to it. So I think connection definitely impacts us as individuals, and it's very important to literature. I will also be discussing literature and significance. With the help of literature, we allow ourselves to feel emotionally. And what I mean by this is that we don't always connect in the best way with our feelings. It takes time for some individuals to connect emotionally with themselves, with others around them. And I think having books and being able to read these books, it allows us the freedom and the ability to relate emotionally to whatever it is, whatever situation we are experiencing at the time. I think literature in general definitely changes the way we think as individuals. Not only does it change our interpretation of how we see things, but it allows us to think positive or maybe see things in a different light. I also think that literature helps us in many ways cope with things that we may be going through in life. I know sometimes when I'm going through something, I pick up that book and I try to look for similar novels or similar stories that kind of have the same issue. Normally, I just look at the summary in the back of the book, and if it's something I can relate to, I just easily pick it up at the store, purchase it, and then after I read it or I finish reading it, I I wouldn't say I almost feel better, but I would say that I definitely have different views on different ways that I can connect with that certain issue that I may be going through, or for future references. Um, I like to just take that book and I read it and I I can relate to how that author may be sending his message to me. Next, I will be discussing how literature is an art. I strongly believe literature is an artistic value in our world. Literature is sometimes our only form of human expression. And I think that when we are writing, it can be some type of outlet. I think that it is 10 times easier to express something on paper with a pen than to verbally say it. In this form of literature, I know that I can relate to it in this way because I know I'm more than sure that I write differently than when I say things verbally. It just comes out very different. I feel more comfortable jotting something down than verbally talking about it. And it definitely strikes me because when I say something, I don't always say it in the best way possible, but if I write it, I feel like others can understand me better and they know what kind of message I'm trying to express. And I feel like this is why some individuals choose to write books and choose to be authors because through poetry and through writing, it's to me it seems much easier to write your message down than to verbally speak it. I don't know if this is the case for all writers or for all authors, but in my case, this would definitely be why I enjoy writing. I think it's just a beautiful art, and your words can be easily expressed on paper rather than verbally. Lastly, I will be discussing literature's interpretation. I think we all interpret the art of literature differently. I think this is the most interesting thing about literature. We as individuals and as people, we all have different mindsets. And I think something I would read and something someone else would read, there would be two completely different messages thrown across the novel. That person can interpret it differently than I would, which is understandable because we are not the same person. We have different thoughts. Our mindsets are totally different. And the way that something can be expressed to that individual will not be the same way that it's expressed to me. And the way that I perceive it is going to be completely different. And I think that's the cool and fun fact about literature is that the author can send so many different messages that are going to reach so many different people. And it's not going to be just one message, it's going to be multiple messages. And not every message is going to mean the same thing. Something that I read in a book is going to be a completely different message, or maybe it's not even going to be a message that the author intended it to be, but it's going to be there because we as individuals think differently. So I think literature's interpretation is extremely important. How we interpret it and how we understand it is crucial. And this was my final slide. I hope you enjoyed my presentation over literature and why I think that it is extremely important.